Welcome to Crypto Disrupted, a cryptocurrency and blockchain podcast with your hosts, Trent Lipinski and Greg Kerr.
All right, well, welcome back. This is Greg Kerr, and I'm here with Trent Lipinski, and we have a special guest with us today, Charlie Sherlock. And Charlie's taking lead on a really important problem, something that I first saw when I was down in South America about kind of fraudulent medicines. And coming from the United States, I never knew this was a global problem, but I actually saw pharmacies be burned while I was in Brazil because of this issue, selling fake or counterfeit drugs. So Charlie, welcome to the show, and we're going to give you the stage to kind of introduce yourself, tell us who you are, how you came to this problem, and your solution.
Okay, cool. Thanks a million. Thanks, Greg. Thanks a million, guys, for inviting me along to allow us to have a chat today. So my name is Charlie Sherlock. I am based in Dublin, in Ireland, and we have set up, myself and some colleagues of mine, have set up an organization recently called Check It's Real. So we have two brand names, Check It's Real and VerifyMyMeds. Our whole goal and objective is to stop counterfeit product. You mentioned it there immediately when you said it, Greg. In fact, 50% of all drugs bought online are fake. And last year, 67 million Americans bought prescription medicine online. So it is an enormous problem. And actually, it's not even about money. It costs about $110 billion a year, this industry. But actually, 1 million people a year die as a result. Because we all think, when we think of fake meds, we all think of the Viagras and so on and so forth. But actually, it's chemo, it's malaria drugs, it's, because a lot of these drugs are very expensive. Like a bag of chemo is about $15,000. So there's quite a lot of incentive there to interrupt the supply chain. No one wants to buy fake meds because you're taking them for a reason. No one wants to buy fake meds, but it's such a profitable business. And if you just see some of the pictures we've seen on our website where, in China, they literally are walking on a mountain of fake goods. And the issue is, you pack the real drugs, you pack the fake drugs, there's no way you can actually tell the difference. So our solution basically is to provide something very simple. So we create a unique QR code for every single item. So for every single package. And in fact, you can have a number of QR codes per package. So that you scan it using your mobile device. We have a very simple app. You scan the product. It references our blockchain database because we have married together the unique code and the manufacturer's data. So we know what that asset refers to. You simply scan it. Immediately, it'll come back and give you that product, assuming it's a genuine code, assuming it's a genuine one of our codes. So there's a lot of good encryption technology there, and obviously the fact that it's a blockchain database is ideal because this is kind of sensitive information you're putting out there. You want it to be robust, you want it to be ubiquitous, you want it to be traceable and secure. So it's a great enabler for that solution. But as an end customer, the idea is you scan it, it'll tell you immediately what that QR code relates to. So in other words, it's a packet of X, and you should be able to verify immediately. And it goes from a drug all the way through sunscreen is a big issue, believe it or not. Baby food. There are companies in Ireland who make a fortune from securely wrapping and sending baby food to countries like China because, again, the fakes are so good. They've no way of actually knowing. So it's a very simple idea. It doesn't take long to explain. So we have a patent pending on the entire process, and that's going through now. We were granted patent pending status back in October. We have an app live. VerifyMyMeds is on Google Play Store, and it's real time. It goes back into our blockchain infrastructure, and we're in the process of launching an ICO because the currency we're going to use to enable manufacturers to purchase our codes will be a token, and we're going to pre-issue those tokens to allow us to fund the company, grow the company. And we believe that the tokens themselves a lot of some of the criticism, coming out about tokens is what are they related to? Can you buy anything specific with this? Well, in our case, yes, you can. You buy the codes, the manufacturer will buy the codes using the tokens as a currency of transaction, if you like, and it will create, a certain value, and it also give us good visibility and good funding. So that's what we're about. As I said, we have two brands. We have Check It's Real, which is a ubiquitous brand. It's designed from anything from football jerseys to designer watches, designer handbags, whatever. And we do some different things with that brand. So sometimes we bring you to a marketing thing, etc. VerifyMyMeds is a bit more pure, if you like. We don't record any data on you. We don't want any medical information. It's a private transaction. All we simply do is note that you have scanned an item. We reference it in our database and we give you back the information. So it's much cleaner, much more pure. And as I say, look, 1 million people a year die as a result of fake drugs. Our goal is to try and reduce that number in any way, shape, or form.
No, that's a really great problem to kind of tackle. And I was reading through some of our materials over the weekend, and we had this line in one of our papers that we say we're hoping to demonstrate that we understand currency, we understand blockchain, we also understand the human condition, and where all three of those come together. And when it comes to like falsifying products, especially medicines, that's one of those things where you sit there and you're talking about, like, I understand the human condition, and falsification or artificial like products come in at usually like crutch points, right? In the human condition, there's certain things that are required for existence. And, when you find those little nodes, people are willing to falsify those because they know they're important. Luxury is one of them, so handbags and things like that, like humans love luxury. And the other is medicine. You also touched on baby food, diapers. Like, these are things like in my time in the third world, like I didn't realize baby food was a hot black market item. But man, if you could get some Similac into some markets, you could be a rich man, really getting them there. So I love that you guys have combined this to kind of say, here's something within the human condition that needs to be solved and fixed, and some security. And this mostly affects people in like vulnerable markets. So say like the first time I came across this was at rural parts of Brazil, Africa. This is huge. They don't even really like this have differences in drugs. Like, people just go to the doctor to get tablets. You would see these tablets with like these vague descriptions, and you're just like,
I have no idea. 30% of all drugs in Africa are fake. 30%. 20,000 people died 2 years ago in Ghana as a result of fake malaria medication that the government bought and thought they were buying the real thing. And as a result, 20,000 people died because it had whatever ingredient in it. It wasn't what you wanted it to be, So it's a very serious and emotive issue. And as I said, a human cost. You mentioned it there. It's your human condition is from the medicine side of medicine get better to I'm buying my designer item and I don't want to be ripped off, all the way through to aircraft parts. There's a huge trade in fake aircraft parts. Again, nobody wants to buy them, but because they're so expensive, there is opportunity there in the supply chain, especially for countries which mightn't have certain regulatory controls. For instance, here in Europe, we have the Fraudulent Medicines Act, and there has to be traceability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't translate to me as a customer. Okay, so if I go online and I buy from a website, a lot of websites purport to be from Canada or the US, whatever. They're not in reality. As I said, 67 million Americans in 2016 bought drugs online. 50% of those drugs statistically are fake. Even be nice about it. Even say only 10% are fake. That's 6 million Americans, 6.7 million Americans, who are taking something that is not what they need it to be. And why do you take these things? You take these things because you need them. You need them to get better, to retain your health, to whatever it happens to be. And the beauty of QR codes are fantastic because you can have billions and billions and billions of them. We've really good encryption there to make sure that we track it and so on. And the beauty of the whole blockchain side of it is that gives you the instant verification, instant validation. So, one of the questions we get asked is, what's to stop fraudster from taking a genuine packet of pills and just copying your code? It's like, they can do that. Anyone can do that. But that code can be scanned once before it's locked out in our database. So you're taking away the economic imperative for these guys. No one is going to create a substitute product if they can sell one of them. If it's packaged, they'll go elsewhere, right? So our goal is to try and take away the economic impact and the economic incentive. Okay, so the industry is a mass market industry. It's like the old saying, why do you have a burglar alarm in your house? Because you want them to go elsewhere. And that's literally what we're trying to do. And, blockchain is an absolutely fantastic enabler because you're getting drug companies put all their data, different companies putting all their data in one. It needs to be secure. It needs to be robust. It needs to be highly scalable. And it needs to be, can be anonymized, etc. as well. And absolutely, blockchain is the ticket to that kind of level of security that we want. Very cool. Charlie, so can you give a little bit of your personal background as well? So you've been in Silicon Valley, you've been around, right? Yeah, as I always say, this isn't my first dance. So I worked for several companies. I've worked for, I used to be in the defense industry. I used to sell military equipment, so on. I've had a couple of software companies myself. I hope to just be my second patent that I will apply for. So I would have done this before. So I suppose you'd say I'm an entrepreneur. I developed a couple of ideas and a couple of companies along the way. I would have worked in Silicon Valley. I would have worked in Tel Aviv. I would have worked all across the Middle East. And Ireland is a great country from a launch pad perspective. We're beautifully positioned smack bang in the middle, if you like. And we get, in fairness to our government is very business orientated. We have an institution here called Enterprise Ireland, and it doesn't exist anywhere else. And it's a government entity whose goal in life is to help you create companies to export and so on. Because that's, that's the way we work. And actually, an interesting statistic, Ireland has had a huge amount of foreign direct investment from the US. But there are more US citizens employed by Irish companies in the United States than there are Irish people employed by US companies in Ireland. And actually, pharma is huge here. I think we're the largest per capita in terms of pharma. So this is a great test bed of a country. As I said, I would be probably 70-80% commercial, maybe 20-30% technical. I can't go down very, very deep. But at the end of the day, I know it works and I know what sells. And it is nice to come around after selling various different solutions over the years, actually having a solution which can actually be a positive impact, and actually can help to solve something that is pretty serious and only getting worse. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your team? Yeah, so we have my main partner in crime is a gentleman called Christopher Castanzas. Christopher is he's a scary IT guy. Okay, Christopher will come along to you and say, yes, this is easy, and it's not easy, right? It's not easy, but he makes it easy. And if you don't know him, he scares you because you're gonna go, no, that's it, guy's nuts. He's brilliant. He's absolutely amazing. He's a fantastic guy. He makes, blockchain contracts, all this type of stuff. We have all this stuff already set up. It's incredible, stuff we get done very quickly. So he heads our development team. We have a gentleman by the name of John Hand, who is the ex-head of architecture for HSBC Bank globally. He's on board to help put in our infrastructure because we will end up being a currency trading platform. Okay, and obviously, people tend to focus, okay, we're going to go ICO. But what happens after that, the day after that? You need to go and make this real, So he's on board. I have another gentleman, a very good friend of mine, by the name of Martin Wickham, who's on board as our COO. Martin has been running IT companies and so on for many, many, many years. And there's a couple more. We're quite early stage in terms of the team. We'll come back in a couple of weeks. There's a couple of people in the US that we talked about earlier on that I have targeted. I have a very good friend of mine who runs a telecommunications company out of Lebanon, out of Beirut. I have certain people in the health industry in Saudi Arabia and also Egypt. So it's quite an international, good, diverse team. It's growing, and we are early, but over the next 3 to 4 weeks, you'll see that team be bolstered considerably. As I said, one of the advantages of it not being my first dance is that I know a lot of people. So you can pick and choose, and it's good. It's really good.
No, I like you're coming from this with a diverse background, and and understand the importance of logistics accountability. And there's a bottom line to that. And you're really highlighting that there is like this ability to streamline business, to create trust, and to be quickly a trusted agent around the world. Like normally you have to have these established relationships. You talk about, doing work in Lebanon. Oh my gosh, I talk about having to build trust, within that culture. But it's almost like you can step in and you can say, hey, this is why we can be trusted, because we're on the blockchain.
That's the art of blockchain. That's why it works. Because we don't trust each other. That's why it works.
Yeah, it's an exercise in transparency, and then to just kind of use that or weaponize it or commercialize it to say, hey, this open, like my open pockets, my empty pockets are what I'm selling to you. Why isn't my competitor open? Why isn't he on the blockchain? And I'm starting to, like, as I start floating blockchain around my African peers, I'm starting to hear some pushback, obviously, with change. And then, are you trying to compete with national currencies, which the nationalistic people kind of have a hard time with? But basically, it just comes down to being open, transparent, and you're going to make more friends if you show that your hands are empty. No tricks up your sleeves. No, you like say, I don't even have the ability to deceive you. Because all my products are on this like completely immutable ledger, and everybody's welcome to see it. So no, I kind of like that kind of asymmetric attack to the status quo. And who's going to be a relevant business in the future? You are, because you're building things that are showing that you're actually going to be able to do what you say. You deliver what you have.
There's no hiding. There's no, and look, I agree with you entirely in terms of the transparency isn't just in relation to the product, it's also in relation to the currency that you trade. If you look at the UAE government have just announced that they're going to introduce their own cryptocurrency, which they're going to launch among their own citizens, so that the government is backing a cryptocurrency in the UAE, which their own citizens and tourists and so on can use to replace their existing currency, which is also pegged to the dollar. So I think you're absolutely. I think we're at a very interesting point where you have, on the one side, you have countries who are closing things down and trying to regulate, etc. And absolutely it needs to be regulated. There's no doubt. But then again, you have other countries going, do you know what? This makes an awful lot of sense. We can adopt this, and we're trying to take that very transparent approach. A lot of ICOs that I have seen launch a currency and it's vague as to what it actually is or what it can do, or it's designed really for trading, okay, and for trading and exchanges and stuff, and that's not our approach. Our approach is we have a product, we ship that product to a customer. Customer wants to purchase our product, they use this mechanism to do that. It makes it very simple, it makes it very easy for us, it makes it completely automated. For us, we can process billions and billions of these things in no time at all. Plus, because that's generating a certain amount of liquidity, it should, in time, potentially increase the value of the actual currency in itself, which will help reward people who supported us earlier on. So that's our approach. Our approach is very open, very simple. And if we're in it together, we're in it together, and we want to bring down that million number in terms of million people who die each year. We want to give a better solution out to, I had a friend of mine explain to me when he bought sunscreen over in a particular European country, it was fake. He put it onto his children. The child was 5. It's like, it's crazy stuff, if we can help solve that, plus if we can generate something which, as you say, is very open, is very transparent, then I think we've got a nice combination here. Whereas I see a lot of, blockchain is obviously the new black, et cetera, and people trying to paint it in and squeeze it in and so on. For us, it really is the architecture that allowed us to do this in the first place. And that to me is so we're not doing it for the marketing side. We're doing it because it's real, because we need it, and we need a type of infrastructure. And it is a fantastic enabler for us. I was actually at an IT show here in Dublin very early on last year, where there was some people talking about blockchain technology and what it was. And that was the kind of the genesis moment, the eureka moment. Was like, do you know what? All of a sudden, 3 or 4 things came together, and technology now is enabling us to put together a very simple solution, which is very cheap to deploy, which can protect millions and millions of people.
No, absolutely. And you hear all the time, I watch all the TED Talks, trying to learn about blockchain, and they say it's going to disrupt logistics. It's going to help with this, help with that. But I was always frustrated when nobody could tell or give a real world example. It's like, how? What do you mean? You know, like, oh, it's going to change voting. Like, explain that. How do you need a centralized authority for voting, don't you? You know, and so there are certain ways where I'm still struggling to see where the blockchain is really going to help. I have that faith, and I'm pursuing and looking. But this is an example where, yeah, instead of getting up and almost giving a platitude that this is a disrupting technology, you're showing an application saying this is going to disrupt counterfeiting, or, you know, what do they call it, product piracy. And it'll be interesting to see how the black market reacts to that, because there's always a reaction. You know, they're going to try to like dupe the dupe and kind of backdoor whatever solution you come up with. And it'll be interesting to watch that almost arms race between, you know, your ability to track true logistics and the counterfeiter's ability to be clever enough to go around it.
They'll shift, you know, like the markets are, there's over 1 trillion individual packets of medication produced every year. You know, the market will shift. They'll go to different things and so on. And ultimately, we're not going to be everywhere, probably. But you know, it's very simple. We're trying to take that economic incentive away and we're literally trying to push them on to somewhere else. You won't solve counterfeit. People will counterfeit forever. They always have. You won't solve it. Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take certain products and we're trying to protect the purchaser. And that's really what we're trying to do. And you will do that for a certain percentage. They'll go off and they'll do something else. I have no doubts about it. Because the beauty of this technology is you can't mess it up. That's the beauty of blockchain. You know, it's what Bitcoin is being based on for the last, you know, since it was launched. A gazillion people in the world have tried to mess it up and try to hack it and try to make money out of it. And sure, you've had exchanges and so on and so forth, which have fallen victim. But that's not the integrity of the blockchain database. The blockchain infrastructure is probably the most tested piece of technology on the planet. And I'm always a great believer in if it's man-made, it can be man-broken. But actually, it kind of appears that this one really can't. Which to me is amazing. So I genuinely think it's an amazing piece of technology. I laugh when you see it everywhere. You have you know, blockchain and pharma conferences, you have blockchain logistic conferences, as if you just literally get a sticker called blockchain, you stick it on something, and all of a sudden everything is perfect, right? That's not the way, but it is an emerging technology. And when you have the likes of the Microsofts and the Oracles and all these kind of guys coming in, and IBM's doing their own solutions and bringing, I think you're really, it's going to be to my mind, I think it's probably going to be as disruptive as the internet has been to how we do commerce. You know, it's completely different. And you're right, it's finding those early world examples where you can apply it and where it actually makes sense. And for us, it's an enabler for us. We couldn't do this without it, because you'd be into discussions of, I'm having all this information in the cloud, how is it secure, blah, blah, blah. You know, very, very long and hard discussions to continually have. Is in a blockchain database. Door closed. You know, you can't mess it.
I think ultimately, you know, the solution that you guys are working on, the simplicity of it, you know, it's just so functional. It's, you know, you've got your QR code, you're attaching it to a different drug, you know, you can scan it once. You know, the use case is just so clear. You know, we've had other people on the show, you know, where we're talking philosophy and we're talking all these different things and, you know, different architectures and everything. But in this case, it's like, you know, this just makes sense. It's, you know, you're applying the blockchain in a way so that you can easily track and watch the supply chain of these drugs and make sure that you're buying what you think you're buying, and verifying to make sure it's the right thing. It's that simple.
It is that simple. It is that simple.
And how's the drug industry? Have you been liaising and contacting them? Are they supporting your efforts? Or are they skeptical? How are they handling it?
Well, it depends on where you go. The drug industry here in Europe is pretty well regulated, and there are certain EU directives which were launched probably about 6 or 7 years ago to manage the whole supply chain process, so that the drugs that are actually shipped to the pharmacy, whatever, can actually be traced. And that's very good stuff that they've done. What it doesn't do is it doesn't bring it to me or you. Okay, so if I buy from a pharmacy, whatever, which is fine if it's a regulated pharmacy down the road that I know it is, but if it's, you know, it was like the 6, 7 million Americans buying from you over the internet, it's a different issue. The drug industry is always slow to change and always is slow to move. However, this is probably their biggest issue. So, and in certain countries, it's an even bigger issue. So it is those countries that we're actually going after. And we're doing it through various mechanisms. They have, in fairness, the drug industry funds about 3 or 4 groups, which are kind of their own think tank groups for this kind of solution. And they have, they have applied many different types of solutions to try and resolve this. RFID tags, they do chemical testing kits, etc. Unfortunately, none of that is any use to URI because I don't have a chemical testing kit or an RFID reader on my phone, and most certainly you're not going to have one in Africa. We have no mobile signal in the first place. And one of the beauties of our application is to work online and offline. So the reaction has been quite positive. We expected it to take a lot of time because they are so heavily regulated. We are working with a couple of the major farmers, a couple of the major distributors, but it has to be, in my view, it has to be customer demanded, if you like, or legislated, or there has to be a pull. That's the way you'll always get people to move as quickly. So we have part of our sales team focused on that group, and quite frankly, we have part of our sales team focused on the more ubiquitous type solutions, where you're going to get probably a faster hit, but you're not going to be as disruptive. Okay, so there's one organization we're working with, they make complicated radio telecommunications equipment. They're using our solution basically as a quality assurance solution for when it goes on site. They scan 6 or 7 items. If they don't scan together, it doesn't get validated, etc., etc. We've another organization working to do with clothing, sports apparel, sports clothing, branded clothing, to make sure that it's real when you get it, and so on. And that goes off into the marketing side. So we're also working on some KYC, know your customer. So in validation of identity projects. There's a couple of the major banks in the world coming together to try and see, because it's a huge cost for organizations to validate that you are who you say you are, and henceforth your money and your transaction flow is legitimate, to try and cut down on money laundering, etc. So there's opportunities there that we're working on. So we're again, the pharma industry is focused on resolving this issue. And irony of ironies is that they have come to court, and particularly in the States, where people who have purchased medicine online and it has turned out to be fake have gone and basically sued the real manufacturer to say, hey, you didn't make this easy for me. Here's my fake drug packet. Here's your real one. They look exactly the same. How am I supposed to know as a consumer that one is fake? I'm not always going to buy from your pharmacy down the road, and that's controlling, that's controlling the market. I need freedom to be able to purchase from where I want to purchase. And actually, they've been successful. So the irony of ironies is that the legitimate pharmaceutical companies are actually getting sued because they're not making their drugs ostensibly identifiable, such that from your eye that we can actually see immediately. So the engagement has been positive. It'll take time. There's absolutely no doubt it'll take time for it to start to grow, which is why we're concentrating on other areas as well to get the dynamic and get the flow out there. But definitely, it's probably I'd say the single largest area of where we believe we're going to have an impact, and it'll be for the United States, it'll be for the developing world, it'll be for Asia, it'll also be for the Middle Eastern region, which is a little bit more fluid in terms of regulatory import controls than potentially Europe. Europe is more advanced, shall we say.
That is interesting. You bring up a really good point that, the same solution that can help malaria pills in Africa could also track something at Christie's stockhouse. It's counterfeit. No other way around it. You could blockchain every piece of art in the Louvre. Yeah. And then, if it's ever stolen, then you can track this, and it is, once again, like you said, that game-changing effect there. And I wonder too, if this really streamlines the medicine or the pharmaceutical industry to the point that it makes drugs cheaper and more accessible to more people. And when you start looking for second and third order effects, when you start getting true drugs that solve true problems in these places with a lot of disease, like I said, putting back into Africa, when you stop having this counterfeit effect and people start getting better and they start feeling better, less illness, the more production, malaria, like we can sit here and talk about it from the West of, it's a bad thing, but man, when it really does suck your productivity, And I had somebody out with malaria every single day I was in Africa, you know. Now I caught it once too, and then I sit there too. Man, yeah, just really, and you just think that like everybody in Liberia has malaria at some point of the day, and you're just like, that's why nothing can really get done, or one of the reasons, you know, is malaria. So if you could really start like countering that, that's amazing.
You hit a great point there, because, you know, we talk about the million people who die directly, but at the end of the day, an enormous amount of knock-on effect and cost is caused by people not getting direct medication. They're sicker for longer, they develop other issues, etc. So your cost is actually, cost in terms of human terms, forget about the money, cost in terms of human terms is actually multiplied, you know, because you're sicker for longer, that has an impact on your work and your productivity and your family, on what you can actually do, etc. Plus, you're in the health environment longer, it's costing you more money, or it's costing your government more money. That has to be paid for. Somebody's paying for that. We pay for it through our taxes. So, you know, the actual knock-on effect, I honestly believe, is probably in the area of 1 to 10. You know, for every one person that loses their life through taking medication, doesn't do what they need it to do, you probably have 10 others who spend a lot longer within the health system trying to get better, because they have been impacted by this. And, you know, as I said, in some countries, it's just, again, 30% of all meds in Africa are fake. So you go into a hospital, you're taking the legit that they have paid for, and it doesn't do well, you know, because a bag of chemo and a bag of saline look exactly like each other. How are you going to know, you know? So it is. I think the human cost, as you've hit on, is actually a lot higher, and the cost to society is a lot bigger, which is brilliant that we can have such a simple solution that's very understandable, that's very cheap to deploy, doesn't cost. You're going to be printing a barcode anyway. You're just printing a different barcode. That's it. So like it costs, I don't know how much of a cent it costs to print a barcode, 0.00001 of a cent. You know, so it's not expensive. Anyone can do it. All you need is one of these. You can be offline, you can be online. Doesn't matter that. Anybody can look at it. And you can integrate it completely with various different points in the supply chain. You can append the database with functionality in there that you can append the database such that, you know, you've released a batch of medicine, you realize that there's a problem that needs to be recalled, we can update the database to that. We can suggest if you're, you know, if you're purchasing medicine in country A, that's not allowed in country B, you're trying to, we can do things in relation to warn you, to just allow you to make a better decision, a more informed decision as to what you do before you put it. Me personally, if I order something, I would want to check it out completely before I put it near me, if that option existed. And right now it doesn't, and that's what we're trying to close.
Wow. Yeah, I'm telling you, that is one of those disrupting angles, and the impact can be measured, you know, second and third order effects, faith in systems. So, yeah, I remember I almost lost an innocence when I learned about fake drugs. I took drugs for, you know, growing up, you know, as an American, going, oh yeah, I get better. And then when I saw, whoa, sometimes you take drugs and you don't get better because the drugs are fake.
Exactly.
Like, who's running the show here? How are we, you know, allowing this to happen? How are our policymakers? But, you know, one of those effects where it's like if people like take medicine and then they get better, and then that kind of like a faith in that system and the systems behind those drugs kind of like help you. It's hard to prove that negative, to say where governments and societies lose legitimacy because, you know, something as vital as taking, you know, medicines that really do work. And if, you know, your population doesn't even trust that system, it's hard to be a legitimate government to say, hey, we're here, you know, monitoring and creating rules. You know, why should we pay into this rule system if it doesn't work in like such an important area? So, yeah, we appreciate that work then. Yeah.
You know, aircraft parts, exactly the same, you know. So it's an enormous market so it's in so many different areas that affects us as people. It really is. It is in so many different areas. That it is quite staggering. And I think the human condition is that there will always be fraud, there will always be people who try and beat the system, etc. You can't stop that. What you can do is allow you to make a more informed decision as to what you do. Be you part of an aircraft maintenance supply chain, be you somebody putting sun cream on your kids, be you somebody putting baby food into your baby, be you somebody who is actually taking medication, to allow you to make a more informed decision and give you back the responsibility, if you like, but also the visibility, so that you can say, yeah, no, this is good, I'm good, you know, I'm going to take this, happy days. I know it's verified. Simple as. That's the way it should be. It's what we should expect. but you can't always, so, and as I say, as long as we do that, and the more pervasive we come, the harder we make it for the people, because as I said, we're taking the economic imperative away, or the economic potential away, or incentive, I should say, away, by saying, nah, see that product's out there? Yeah, and there's no point in doing that, because you're not going to sell it, because it's going to be blocked. You'll sell more.
So where can people find you?
We are online. We are VerifyMyMeds.com and checkitthrough.com. We're on LinkedIn, and we'll be launching our ICO site very soon, probably the next 2 or 3 weeks. Our contact details are there. You can look me up on LinkedIn, or my partner Christoph on LinkedIn. Absolutely, we're very contactable. We're always here.
Well, it's been awesome having you on the show. It sounds like you've got a really practical use case for the blockchain, and you're solving a real problem.
Please God. Please God, that's what we're trying to do. Guys, I really appreciate you taking the time and for allowing me to be on, and the very best of luck with your show as it gains more and more audience. Thanks a million, guys.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure. Absolutely.